Hello, it is time for the Hooray to You online class brought to you by dreamandcolor72207.com. This is Virginia Porta, and I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I'm in Arkansas, the United States. And tonight I'm going to do my first online class, and we are going to make, in this class, 5 different cards using the Hooray to You set from Stampin' Up! And if you purchase the card kit from me, I will give you the PDF to make 7 additional cards. So, why don't we get started? Here are the 7 additional cards using the Hooray to You stamp set. So let's get started. We have 5 cards to do, and we're going to try 5 different techniques, or generally speaking. So let's get started on the first one. Now, this set of cards builds upon the 3.5 by 5 note cards that are in the catalog. And so these are perfect. These are actually mailable size cards, and so when you want to send a little pick-me-up, a little thank you card, or a little birthday greeting, but you don't want to have to write a long letter, these are great cards to use because they're not very big. However, they are easily mailable. So we're going to start on this card, and I say we're starting on this one. We're going to do this one and set aside the base of the card first. So what we're using tonight are the new 2020 to 2022 in color inks. We will be using the Stampin' Right markers. We have Magenta Madness, Bumblebee, Cinnamon Cider, Misty Moonlight, and Just Jade. So to create this background that we have here on this card, we're going to simply take the brush end of the marker, which is easily determined by the broad stripe versus the narrow stripe, and then you see here's a bullet end, and that's a brush end. And we're going to just take this and we're going to start. Now, there is no right or wrong. We're just going to do it. Now, I am going to recommend that we not use Cinnamon Cider, and it's just a little too dark for our tastes, but we can proceed with the others. Now, we're not going to color the whole front of the card. You know why? Because there's a panel that goes over the front of the card. So let's get started. We kind of have an idea of what our bands need to look like. So let's just get started going down the side. And it's always good to have a piece of paper behind your work surface so that if you do color off the page, you're covered. Stampin' Right markers are awesome because you have the same intensity as the stamp pads, and you're able to do some additional things with them. This is also a very affordable way to build your color sets and your color family. If you aren't ready to invest in stamp pads for all the colors, or you're not sure which ones you like best, Stampin' Right markers are the great way to test out colors. And that's one of the reasons I set this class up this way, was so that we could have some fun doing these types of things. Now, I am going to get down to the bottom of this corner and then go back up to the next corner on the next side. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close this so that we don't get ink on the back of the card. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, I'm going to date myself, but this reminds me of Fun Stripe candy or gum that I remember going to when I would stay with my grandparents in the summer. I would walk up to the Big Star grocery store, and I would have all of, I think, probably 20 cents to spend, and I would get, I think, Big Stripe gum. It was really super sweet, but it was really fruity flavored too. And it had I think it had a zebra on it. And those of you that have seen our zebra set, that's a similar, it reminds me of the zebra that was on that gum as well. So you can see all we're doing here is very easily making this background. And you know, this is one of those things that you can make whatever kind of a background you want. This is the cool thing about creativity and the tools that Stampin' Up! Provides. You know, there is no right or wrong to creativity. There's no right or wrong way to do cards either. You know, oftentimes when I teach a class, people are so worried, oh, I'm going to do it the wrong way. Well, you know what? You're only sending one card to your friend. They're not going to see all the other samples. They're not going to see the example that you used. So they're not going to know what is right versus what is wrong. Oh, let me get up in the camera. Sorry, I didn't realize I was off camera. So let's finish this up. And if we play our cards right, this should end. It's going to end a little off, but that's okay. We will make that work. I'll just stick a blue in there just because it goes well with that. So now we're going to set these aside for a little bit and let it dry. And I'm going to show you in a second how we are able to stamp with Stampin' Right markers. Oftentimes people think, well, how I don't have stamp pads. How can I ink a stamp? So let me set this aside to dry, and I'm going to bring in my Stamparatus. Now, those of you that know me know that I love my Stamparatus. This is an excellent tool from Stampin' Up. This allows you to stamp stamp in the same position multiple times. And when you're working with something like this, ability to stamp multiple times in the same location. So now what we're going to do, and you see that we have 4 colors. We have Bumblebee, Magenta Madness, Misty Moonlight, and Just Jade on the stamp. So all we're going to do is we're going to take again the brush end of the marker, and you're going to approximate where you want it, and you're just going to kind of drag the brush end across the stamp pad, and you'll be able to see that it's beginning to pick up moisture, and this is the ink that's on the stamp pad. Now I'm going to recommend that when you do this way, that you start with your lightest color, which is yellow. Then we're going to go to pink, or excuse me, Magenta Madness, and you're going to make it go about an inch across there. And again, there is no right or wrong to this. This is just beginning to show you how you can make this card with the 5 markers in the in color set of markers. And this works on any stamp. This is not just going to be good on this happy birthday stamp, but because it's a big stamp, it's easy to show you all the ways that this works. So you can see now there's actually some difference in the colors, and you can see, and you say to yourself, well, gosh, what am I going to do now? It's going to dry out. Well, we're going to do this. We're going to color in the balloon string with the cinnamon cider. And this works different times, work different ways, depending on the weather and where you are. When you're in a high humidity environment, it works a little bit differently than when you're in a low humidity environment. Now I've got this paper just about centered. I've marked earlier where this cardstock should go. Now, what we're going to do now is huff. Now, it's not huffing like the kids are doing, the teenagers are doing. This is just to blow hard on your stamp with an open mouth, with lots of moisture from your mouth, like you're trying to fog up a mirror. And so all you're doing is, when you do that, you're providing moisture back over the stamp. So if you're doing it by hand, you would put it up. And I'm going to take this out of the Stamparatus so it's easier to do. put it back in the Stamparatus, bring it over, and stamp the image. Now, I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes because we've got lots of different colors of ink. I'm going to let it sit. Usually I do a count of 5. I'm going to let it go a little bit longer to get the ink to transfer. And then we'll turn it up and look what we have. Now at this point, if you say to yourself, gosh, I really wish I had a darker image there on the A and the D from Happy and Birthday, you know what? You can come back and re-ink that pink part. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Re-ink this. And the beauty of the Stamparatus is, and you all know, that it's static. The paper won't move. The stamp doesn't move. Green needed again. So we're just going to take it over here, apply the ink one more time. And look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And see, that's exactly how easy that was. Super easy, super simple. I'm going to set this aside. Now, the key to using your Stamparatus and the key to using your Stampin' Blend markers is that you have to clean them between uses, especially now if I were going to make a series of cards with the rainbow on them, I could probably get 2 or 3 card impressions before having to clean it, simply because when you got the inks close to each other, you do want to sometimes come back and clean in between. So we're going to start with that one, and using the simple chamois, it's easy just to clean it off. And then we're ready to go for the next one. So what I'd like to do right now is set this aside, set my Stamparatus aside, and I'll show you how we're going to construct the card. And this is so stinking easy and quick. So there you go. We're going to take a little bit of Stampin' Seal. Now this is actually the snail adhesive, which is the old adhesive that Stampin' Up had. I am trying to use up my stash, and so put the Stampin' Seal on that. Oh, let's make sure the card opens the right direction. The card opens perfectly in that direction. Now, the last thing we're going to do is add a little froof on the front of the card, and that is easily achieved by using some of the in color ribbon. Now this is a great ribbon because it is the same ribbon on both sides, and so for those of us that are I can sometimes be a little ribbon challenged, or I should say bow challenged, so we're going to trim the end off at an angle so it won't fray. And then simply take a loop, one set of bunny ears, take this, loop it around just like you're tying a bow, and then pull it through. And at this point, the knot on the bow is super loose, so you can, as you'd say, fidget with it, fuss with it, however you want to call it, until you get the bow the size you want. And then trim it from the spool. And then using your pick a tool, I simply add a couple of glue dots right here at the bottom of the balloon where the ribbon is that we inked with the cinnamon cider. Now obviously you can use any color ribbon you want to use that matches that, well, not any color, you would want to use something that complements. I chose to use cinnamon cider because that was the color of my balloon string, but you know, that could have been any other color. So there you go. Voila, the first card is complete. Now how fast was that? Let's see. Less than 10 minutes, easily less than 10 minutes. So we'll set that aside. Now, our second card is a little bit more involved, and we're still going to be using the Stamparatus because I don't have a block big enough right now to do this. So what you'll notice with this card is that there is some designer series paper that we put on the card to give it some definition. But then we also are coming in, this is going to be all in blue, But then we'll use our Stampin' Blends to color in the choice of our colors. So let's bring in the Stamparatus again. And again, I'm using that simply because that's a great location. Now, we know we're going to do this in blue, so I'm going to just gently do the blue across here and put it on my stamp pad so I know, okay, so I know where I need to place my oval, because I've pre-cut my oval and it just perfectly fits. So there's happy and birthday. So what I'm going to do at this point is put a tiny bit of adhesive behind this, because I want to do the entire image, and I don't want to use magnets if I can help it. So we'll just stick that on there like that. Now we'll come back over here and we're just going to use the brush, the wide end or the side of the brush end of the marker. Color it in. Remember, you're doing an oval, so you'll want to get the bigger part of the balloon. But since we are also able to do this so quickly, we really don't need to huff on this. So let's bring it over here, press it down, and let's see what we have. Okay, let's do this. We got, oh, you know what? I didn't get it quite far enough over. Oh no. So here's something simple. I'm going to show you a little trick. We don't want this part of the stamp to print again because it's already printed here. So we're just going to put a Post-it note over that for the time being. And then we're going to move, actually we're going to move this whole thing over like that. Let's see if that works. You know, one of the things is you can always do things on the fly. And that's one thing I want people to know, that just because you make a mistake doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So let's see what we have there. Look at that. No one will ever know the difference. Now, to be honest with you, I think when I made this the first time, I actually stamped the happy birthday and then cut the oval out. And perhaps I should have done that this time. So let's set this aside for a moment and build the card for the time being. And we'll get this part built. Now, the In Color Designer Series paper comes with the 5 in colors for 2020 to 2022. We also have 2019 to 2021 in colors, and they come with 4 patterns. Here are the, in fact, here's a preview. So we have the Misty Moonlight, Cinnamon Cider, Bumblebee, Magenta Madness, and Just Jade. There are 4 sides to each color. So we have the wood grain, and you can see the wood grain goes through all of them. The words, which I have in my hand, which we're using today, and it's backed with the wood grain. The polka dots, and then this tweed or woven look. So this gives you many options for building various backgrounds for your cards. So right now, I want to use the words, and one of the things is you do want to double check to make sure the words are facing up. So we're going to put some, like I said, Stampin' Seal, since I'm using the end of it. And this really doesn't have to be exactly lined up. You don't want to get it too far over against this side. You want to be probably a good 3/4 of an inch off. Now, something you can do to line up if you're using grid paper, I can get this to, I can do this and line up my grid, and that way it's straight on the paper. Now, you say, but Virginia, you have extra paper. Well, you know what? We're just going to trim it like this. That way, you don't have to line up the edges. You can just simply make it fit. And there you go. So your card is ready to, there's your card base. Let me get my scrap out of the way. In my trash bag. So let's come back now and we're going to color this in. Now, I chose the last time to use pink, the Magenta Madness, the Just Jade, and the Bumblebee for the different flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of that in there. And then we're going to go ahead and color in the rest of the card. So let's come back now and we're going to color this in. Now, I chose the last time to use pink, the Magenta Madness, the Just Jade, and the Bumblebee for the different flowers. obviously. You can use whatever colors you like. But this is just to show you that even with just the set of markers, it's super easy to create a cute card, and actually a variety of cards with a modest set of supplies. This kit, the card kit, comes with a set of the Stampin' Right blends for, the Stampin' Right markers for 2020 to 2021, half of a package of the 2020 to 2021 Designer Series paper, an assortment of ribbons, an assortment of embellishments to use, and the PDF for directions to make all 12 cards. So let's just finish this up. You know, something like this usually takes longer. This is a great thing to do to pre-stamp. If you're going to make a set of these, pre-stamp this part and then take it to where you can watch television or be on the patio doing something with your family, if you want to be with your family or with your friends. You know, it's so important that we connect with people, especially in this weird time. It has been really stressful, I think, for a lot of people. And here in Arkansas, our kids are supposed to be headed back to school tomorrow in public schools. So we're saying a little prayer for our teacher friends, that all things go well. And for our parents who are choosing to homeschool, that is, you're also getting prayers for good luck and a successful semester as well. You know, there's no perfect answer to this. So there you go. There's your happy birthday. So now we have this part made. So the next thing we're going to do, it's also a good idea to keep a pencil around on your desk when you're working. So sometimes you can eyeball it. Sometimes you need to keep a pencil around. So this set has, here are the images again. So you see there's the large balloon. There are three text salutations and two flower sets. So we're going to use the solid sets to stamp these little accent pieces. Again, we're going to stick with the Magenta Madness, the Just Jade, and the Misty Moonlight, and the Bumblebee. And the brush tip is your friend. So we know where that is, so we're just going to pull that up on the card a little bit. And then we'll have that there. Now we'll clean this real quickly because I want to use Bumblebee on the other set of flowers. And with your Simply Chamois, I like to cut mine in half, keep them moist. They're in the half size stamp box. And that way I can pick it up and it's easy to manipulate. I'm not having to flop that whole thing around on my desk. So let's come back in and color this with the Bumblebee. And the green, the Just Jade. And I'm going to stick with the Magenta Madness. You've got a lot of Misty Moonlight on the background of your accent piece. So for spacing purposes, I'm going to pull this down just a little bit just so we know where it goes. Well, you know what? We accidentally stamped there, so there it goes. So there you have it. There's card, well, not quite. So one of the easy ways to provide texture and dimension to your cards is to use Stampin' Dimensionals. These are pre-cut adhesives that are just maybe a 16th, I think, of an inch, 16th of an inch thick, that are great, providing just a little bit of dimension to the front of your cards. They're pre-cut in hexagons, so you get a full page. And these are the balm. I love these dimensionals. We also have black ones, and we have mini, M-I-N-I, not M-A-N-Y. So there you go. So there's card number 2. Now let's set that aside with the template, or with the sample we were going to make, that we made. There's card number 2. Card number 3 has to be my favorite card from the whole set of the cards that I made. It is super simple, and again, there is no right or wrong. So let's take the It's Time to Celebrate. That's, again, one of the sentiments in the kit. And I'm going to use Magenta Madness. We're going to ink it up. And I've pre-cut these tags from these labels from the Timeless Label Punch. And you know what? There's 2 sides to every piece of paper. So we're going to flip it over. Try that again. That's even worse. Guess what? I have another piece of paper. We're going to do one more. This either is going to be perfect or it's going to be good enough. Because, well, right now I'm just looking for good enough. There, good enough. Okay, so we'll clean this off. And it's always a good idea to clean your stamps off as soon as you use them, because you don't want to get your elbow in Magenta Madness or whatever other colors you might have on your table. I accidentally did that the other day and have a nice swath of dark blue ink down the side of some cards I made. Now, I dropped my stamp. Oh, there it is. Now you look at this Simply Chamois. This is not dirty. This is the ink that has come off on it, but it won't come back off on the paper. It absorbs the ink. And then every so often I take it to the restroom and rinse it out with cool water, and all the excess ink flops out. I mean, drains out. And it's great to have. Okay, so we'll put our sentiment there. Now, we're going to use the open flower on this one. One of the things that you need to remember when you make a card and when you're doing a scene of sorts is you don't want everything to be perfectly on the page. So for that purpose, we're going to actually start stamping off the side of the page so that this set of flowers is looks like you've just picked up a picture, as opposed to that you've done something really difficult. So set this here. We'll start with the pink, Magenta Madness. I like the shortcut of just calling it pink, blue, green, brown, and yellow, but that doesn't work well. So you start about halfway up the page. And then if you want, you can always stamp a second generation, but you want to remember that if you stamped off the page, you didn't get the whole image didn't stamp, and so it's not necessarily going to give you the same intensity of color. So let's move this down here, and we'll do a second generation here, and then I'll do this one more time. Over here. And since I've got the full image stamped here, I can do a second generation stamping off right there. Okay, so rinse this off. Well, wipe it off with this chamois. Now the pinks, any of our pinks are particularly stubborn, so we sometimes have to work harder to get those off. I'll leave this open. Now we're going to come back in with our bumblebee. And let's just ink that bad boy up. Then we'll do a second generation down here. Ink it again. Turn it around so it's not exactly the same. And then ink. So So our third color will be the Misty Moonlight. Now, here's a cheat sheet thing to do. You can also stamp off a lot of times when you are going from a lighter color to a darker color. You can stamp off the lighter color to get the stamp pad, to get the stamp image dry. And then look over, there you go. So I'm gonna come back with the blue, ink it up. Again, we're using the side of the brush marker, the brush tip, and then we're gonna stamp off like we did on the other one. Re-ink. A little variety, turn it upside down. And again, there's nothing that says you have to stick with these colors. This is just the set of colors that I'm using because this is the kit that I put together for this class. So there we go. I think we need one more blue one, but it needs to be a second generation stamp. So I'm going to stamp off on my scrap paper. I'm going to put it back here, back behind the pink. There we go. Alright, so what are we going to do now? We're going to clean our stamp. Now you see, by simply turning the image upside down and slightly sideways, you get some variety so that it doesn't look like you just cookie cutter the same stamp image across the table. So then we'll come back with our Just Jade Stampin' Right marker. And all you're going to do is figure out where these stems go. Now, obviously, if the color of the flowers, you know, they're probably going to be on their same stem. Not saying they have to be. But generally, they would be. And so these that are in the background, use a little bit lighter. Use a lighter touch. These are some long stems on these flowers. I don't know about this. I'm sorry, I'm not talking. I got busy concentrating on drawing stems. But see how you add that by the stamping off, this, you layer this is behind it, this is in front of it. So we've got a little change in your dimensions, but then we'll take the dimensionals and we're going to simply take this. Now, let me show you a little trick. This is the end of a package of dimensionals. This is the edge. But you know what? They're still good to use. So I'm going to take this long, narrow piece, stick it down, and peel the backing off. Make sure it's facing the right direction. And then you put your time to celebrate right there. Make sure it's straight. There you go. Card number 3. Easy peasy, right? Okay. Card number 4. I believe we recognize this, do we not? Okay, so again, we're going to stick with the blue, the Misty Moonlight for our blue to do the balloon image, so we can move our masking sheet off the mat. And we have a piece of cardstock that's pre-cut. This is 3 by 4.5, so we're going to set it up so that happy birthday. We know exactly that we're going to get it covered. Just going to line it up just like so. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to, instead of like we did earlier by stamping it, so we're going to do this. We're going to do the entire thing in Misty Moonlight. And then we're going to stamp it again on a piece of scrap paper. And then do what's called fussy cutting. Fussy cutting is when you cut around an image and you have to be particularly careful and you have to fuss with it. So it's called fussy cutting. Sometimes I enjoy fussy cutting, sometimes not so much. But let's try this. Okay. All right, so let's get this straight in the, with that straight on that page. Okay. It's a pretty good image. I'm gonna do this a little bit more. This side is the one that's closest here because you got the hinge in the middle. So this piece right here is on the right, but on your stamped image, because it's upside down, it's going to be on the left. Now I'm not real worried about how broad or how deep the colors are on the happy birthday because we're going to use that again. So we're going to move that. We'll set that up here. I am going to do this real quickly so I make sure I know where I'm looking. I think I've got it set, but sometimes that's easier to do. So now I have a piece of Whisper White. Then I'm going to stamp right here. I'm going to put it right here and put it down with my magnet on my Stamparatus. The Stamparatus is great because you can use magnets to hold your paper down and hold your paper in place so that if you want to stamp an image twice, you can do that. You can blend, as you know, as you saw here, we blended colors. So I'm going to move the magnet a little bit. And I'm going to do a second layer of ink just to be sure that I have a nice bold word for my sentiment. So there you have that. So the next thing we're going to do is, you guessed it, the word birthday. So let me get this magnet. The magnets for the Stamparatus are extremely strong and extremely brittle, so that if you get them real close to each other, sometimes if they snap against each other, they break. And so what you see are my replacement magnets here. And then this is one of my one of the original magnets that I have tape wrapped around so that I can grab it more easily and get it up off the table, off the plate. These are very strong magnets. Okay, so now we're stamping birthday. We've inked it. Just like so. And again, just like I did on the other one, I'm going to go in and do that. We're going to pull that up and we're going to let that dry. While we have the Stamparatus out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment for our last card for the oval. So since we had a little trouble with that the last time, I'm going to place it right like so and put a piece of magnet there. And we're going to once again use the Misty Moonlight using the brush tip of the marker. I'm going to ink that in. Honestly, when I'm making a bunch of cards, if I have the directions, if I'm not creating it one at a time like I would have done to get ready for this class, when I'm making it, I try to assembly line a lot of my work so that I get all of the stamping finished and then all of the cutting finished and then all of this finished and all of that finished. So what I'm going to need to do now is I'm moving the magnet because this didn't completely stamp my image over here on this side. So we're going to come back and re-stamp that side only. And so there we have it. So that's for our last card, and we're going to set that aside. We are now finished using the Stamparatus for the night. to create the sentiment for the happy birthday card, this is where we're going to fussy cut. And so what I recommend is do a rough cut around it so that you're not having to deal with the whole piece of paper. Now, the key to fussy cutting, in my opinion, is you get the paper down in the jaws of the scissors, and you've got paper scissors that are just for this, and then you simply turn the paper as you close the jaws of the scissors. And so if you turn the paper, instead of turning the scissors, you end up with a smoother line. Okay. Again, fussy cutting is one of those things that it's great. You can do it away from your crafting studio or your crafting space, so that if you want to do something with your family, so that you're not, my crafting space is in one of our extra bedrooms, and it's upstairs, and when I'm crafting, I am alone. Now, I can usually hear the television from downstairs, but it's not the same as being downstairs with my family. So sometimes you have to get it's a little fussy, that's the name, when you're doing the descenders on the things like Y. You have to get in there and do it that way. So there's the happy. And of course we have a descender on birthday as well, so we're going to have to work around it again as well. So the more you fussy cut, the more comfortable you become with it, and the faster it goes. The first time I did fussy cutting, it was a sad, sad sight to see. Let me just say. I love straight lines because it's easy to fussy cut around a straight line. And then let's straighten that. There we go. Now we've got some little confetti that fills in between the flowers and the words. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to fussy cut that part out right now. I think it'll be okay to leave it on there for the time being. But that's completely up to you, what you want to do. If you want to fussy cut, in fact, you don't even have to fussy cut. You don't even have to do the sentiment. You could just very easily stamp the happy and birthday add a ribbon, and your card would be finished. But we're going to add a little bit of, we're going to add some dimensionals here, and then to birthday, we're going to add that. Okay, and then we're simply going to place this over the words happy and birthday. You know, a long time ago, my grandmother did a lot of paper crafting, and she made these shadow boxes where she would take paper with a scene on it and then would fussy cut out different pieces to highlight them. I think she would have loved having dimensionals, because I think at the time she used really thick glue that held its shape when she put a dot of it down, and it gave it enough separation from the background. So there's that. Now, we're going to choose to use the Just Jade ribbon on this, and I'll show you why in a second. So let's go ahead and make our bow. Remember, take your one loop, loop it around. Let me try that again. One, well, I'm all thumbs right now. One loop, loop it around, bring it through the hole, just like that, and then we'll start tightening up. This, and really this is such a this ribbon is such a bargain. You don't have to worry about being so careful and precious with the ends. I mean, you don't want to ever waste your supplies, don't get me wrong there, but sometimes you have to have the longer end on this side simply to handle the ribbon. Then we'll come back and trim it, move the dots, just pick Take a tool. These glue dots right now, this particular sheet happens to be left over from probably a paper pumpkin. Now, if you don't know what paper pumpkin is, that is the subscription service that Stampin' Up! Offers. That is a little craft kit in a box every month. It comes to your door. It's $22 plus shipping and handling. And every month, on about the 20th or so, somewhere between the 15th and 22nd, this kit comes in, and it's either going to be a card kit, or it might be something to make Easter or Halloween goodies, or Christmas decorations. It's any number of things, and it comes, and everything you need is in your kit. It includes the adhesives. Your very first kit comes with an acrylic block, and all of they come with an acrylic block about this size, and the stamps are all such that they fit on an acrylic block this size. And they're all very timely, and they're very much associated with the calendar to come. You can either do that as a month-to-month subscription where you pay for it monthly, or there are discounts if you were to buy a 3-month, 6-month, or 12-month subscription. If you're interested in that, please let me know. I have information on my website, www.dreamandcolor.com, but sometimes it's not, sometimes it helps to get a little description with that. Okay, so now that we have our accent piece made, we now can mat this. Now we can either mat this just like this, which looks nice. On this particular one, I chose to tear it to give a little bit of separation. I think today I'm going to simply leave it whole because it looks neater that way. And the thing about this set, and you'll notice, we've had some that are floral, and we've had some that they look somewhat feminine. Some of these cards look a little masculine. So you can do whatever you want and make it your own. You know, there's nothing that says you couldn't have done this all in green ink with blue background paper. That's the whole thing, is you've got the designer series paper. So there's card number 4, easy peasy. So here we are, 50 minutes past the hour, and we're almost finished with 5 cards. So this last piece, this last card is going to be a little bit more involved in that we're going to do a lot of stamping. Now, what you'll see on here is both the open flower stamp and the closed flower stamp. Here's what I'm going to recommend. I want you to watch, and this is a good way to learn how to do random stamping. The key to random stamping is to make it not look like it was a pattern. You want it to look random. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Now, one thing I want you to realize, these are all going to be initial, first impression stamps. We're not going to do any second generation stamping. So let's just start here, and then we're going to ink it. And so what we're going to do is, we had it go in this direction, so turn your paper a quarter of a turn, turn your stamp a different turn your stamp the different direction, and then stamp again. Now, and then stamp again. And one of the things that you can do, that this goes into some of the composition and theory there, is that you'll notice the flowers are in sets of 3s. Well, it's also a good idea to work in triangles. So when you start your initial stamping on this, do it in triangles. You'll see that there are some invisible triangles. 1, 2, this is one here. Here's one like this. Here's a triangle. So we'll do another one. We'll complete the triangle. So we'll do this here. We'll do it like that. And then we'll do this over here off the page. And then we'll do one more. I love this Magenta Madness, and it would be real easy for me to just go overboard with it. But I know that I have 4 other colors to use. So what are we going to do? We're going to clean the stamp. Now, let's come back in with the bumblebee because I want to make sure I get plenty of light colors on this. It's easy to sort of gem tones, the reds or the pinks and the blues and the greens. And you sort of stick them together. And once you get the initial triangle pattern in with the Magenta Madness, it's not as critical that you follow that logic now. All you want to do now is just using that randomness of the way those were stamped, you just come in and you finish the cluster. So for every pink one, for every one that's in Magenta Madness, you do one in Bumblebee. And hope that you don't drop the stamp on the card and make everybody sad. Okay, so what's the next thing we're going to do? You got it. We're going to come back in with just Jade. And again, because I'm going from a lighter to a darker, I can take a shortcut. It's called Lazy Man Stampin'. And again, we're going to just nestle this in where we've got a cluster of flowers. We're going to just put this in between them, being sure that you continue to remember to stamp off the page. And something like this, even down in this corner, there's no reason why you couldn't just take that big one and really make it random, because you obviously we wouldn't have had those two images that close together generally. Let's see. When it starts getting full, well, I wouldn't even say this is full, but when it starts filling up, you do have to be a little careful where you put your stuff so that you aren't stamping on top of each other. And you don't want to leave some really hard holes to fill. But if you do, it's okay. We've got a plan for that because, well, that's what we do. Alright, so I want one more piece of just Jade. And I think I want it right there. Okay. Let me go ahead and clean this off a little bit. Coming in with my Misty Moonlight now. I don't know, which color do you like better? I like Misty Moonlight, but I like Magenta Madness too. I don't know that I can pick a favorite. You know, some years I absolutely love the end colors. Some years I'm kind of meh. This year is one of those years because they're deep, rich colors. The pastels are generally not my friend, but there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got their favorites. So you can see we're beginning to fill in and we're almost finished. Now, if you were to make a series of these cards, you could in fact make this on 8.5 by 11 paper. And obviously, if you were making quite a few, you would probably want the stamp pads. It would go much faster because you wouldn't be having to stop and ink like this. It would be a much faster inking process. Let's see. One more right smack in the middle. And one more right here. Now the last thing we have on this page now, we're going to put in some flowers in the cinnamon cider. That again is your personal preference. These colors though, because they're associated and they are introduced as in colors together, they are designed that they have the same tones and values and hues so that they do complement each other well. So that's one of the things that Stampin' Up! Takes a lot of the work out of putting colors together. You don't have to second guess. You know that when you pick up the end colors for this year, that they're going to go together with each other. Then on top of that, we have a series in each. We have 4 color sets, 4 color families: neutrals, brights, subtles, and regals, that each contain 10 colors in there. And each of those 10 sets work beautifully together, as well as coordinate across the sets. So there's nothing that says that you can't combine colors, and in fact, you're often encouraged to do so. One of the resources that Stampin' Up! Provides, we're going to draw that like that. That's a little sad. You got to make sure you get ink on all of the stamp. One of the resources that Stampin' Up! Provides is a thing called a color coach, and you can contact me for that. They've again gone through and done a lot of the work, and they can tell you what colors are likely going to go well together. Usually you'll stick with a group of maybe 3, sometimes 4 colors. When you start getting too many colors, it gets kind of crazy, like this card right here. So we have all of this in. Now, if you wanted to, you could come back with the solid images like I did on this card and fill in. But I kind of like this being a little bit more open. And again, there's no right or wrong. You can do it any way you want. So we're going to put a piece of the Designer Series paper here. And one of the things we're going to do before we put the Designer Series paper is to take a piece of the Misty Moonlight, and we're going to cut it at 5, maybe 7 inches, give or take. We're simply going to put some adhesive on each end. Well, actually, we'll put adhesive on the whole thing. And we're going to tuck a piece of the ribbon here. And trust me, this will be fine. And we're going to simply just lay it over here till it fits. You don't want to make it too tight. You make it a little, well, there we go. And then tuck it behind it. And we're going to trim that because that's a lot of excess. And then we will put this down on the card about halfway, a little bit below halfway. But you know, this is another thing that you can do, that if you've got a boo-boo on your card and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, you can always put this over that. So one of the fun things we have is this grid paper. This grid paper is, and you will recognize the colors, Bumblebee, Magenta Madness, Just Jade, Moonlight, Misty Moonlight, and Cinnamon Cider. This year's the first year they've come out with the work table, or the work pad paper, and it's fun to have because you can see the cards. Now, because that ribbon is right there on the end, I'm adding a glue dot just to provide a little bit of extra security, because the glue is holding the ribbon on to the piece of Designer Series paper and is not adhered to the card. So let's put that down like that. And then we'll do the same thing on the other end. All I'm doing is picking it up, tapping it down, pulling off the backing, and then pat it down like that, and there you have it. Now, we come back with our most wonderful little sentiment that we have here. We'll take this, and again, we're going to attach it with dimensionals, and then go forward from there. Now, at this point, you might ask, well, what can I do? This still needs a little, you want something, maybe you want a little bit of glamour, a little bit of glitz and glamour on the card. Well, one of the things that you can do, because like I said, Stampin' Up! Has all sorts of things that they prepare for us. One of my favorite accessories, or we call them embellishments, is what are called the rhinestone basic jewels. Now, in your kit for this class, I've included an assortment of pearls and jewels that are color coordinated. And let me get these out with our 5 cards and just say, well, I don't know, I'd kind of like to have a little something on here. So let's just add a little rhinestone down here, down up here. And I would say it's always a good rule to use groups of 3. Now, you have the plain one, which is not too bad. That would be great for a kid. So you've got this one with a little bit of glimmer on it, a little bit of glitz. which is good. Let's see if we want to do that to any of these others. I don't think we really want to do that with the blue and green. This one looks a little manly, a little masculine. I don't think you need to, doesn't need any rhinestones. This one we could put rhinestones on if we wanted to. We could put the tiny rhinestones on as flowers, centers, and some of the bigger flowers. You have to be careful. I know it's hard to imagine that there's ever could be such a thing as too much glimmer, too much rhinestone, but sometimes too much is too much. But this case, this is subtle. We're using the smallest rhinestones available, and we're going to put it just in the centers of the large flowers. I would suggest limiting it to just the large flowers. You don't want to go overboard. And then everybody's going to want cards with rhinestones on them if you make this. So let's move that one over. Rhinestones are great because they also go, I should say match, because they're clear. They match everything we use. They're so almost finished. And again, you see me working in my assembly line because I've made all my cards. I'm going to come back and add embellishments to my cards in an assembly line. Again, I think we're going to leave this one plain with no rhinestones. And then there's a lot going on with this rainbow. I think we'll leave it plain as well. So let me clean off my table just a little bit and we'll recap what we did. We started with the Hooray to You set. We used our 5 in color Stampin' Right markers. We used ribbon, the in color ribbons. And at the class tonight, you've made 5 cards that are super simple. Not shouldn't say super simple. They were easy to make. Didn't take us but a little bit more than an hour with introductions to make these 5 cards. And then if you buy the kit online from me, you'll get the instructions, the PDF instructions to make these cards and to make another 10 cards. No, 10 or 7, another 7 cards, I'm sorry. So all of that's available, all that information is available on my website at dreamandcolor72207.com. Remember, I'm a Stampin' Up! Independent demonstrator in Arkansas. If you do not have a demonstrator that you're working with currently, I would love to help you out by sending you a catalog. If you want me to send you a catalog, DM me or message me through Facebook, one way or the other. I would love to work with you and be your consultant and your demonstrator, and we could work together to make more cards, make home decor items, and memory keeping. All right. So there you have it. Thanks so much for joining me, like I said, for the inaugural online class for Dream and Color. This has been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned a little bit from this. If you have any questions, like I said, don't hesitate to DM me or message me through Facebook. Otherwise, have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.